While Brandon Lee's penultimate film launched him towards stardom, the production was filled with bizarre mishaps, secret Swedish cameos, bowling alley police headquarters, and a sequel script that became Die Hard with a vengeance. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Rapid Fire. Fact 1. Brandon's watermelon foot disaster. Brandon Lee's dedication to performing his own stunts in Rapid Fire led to one of the most painful and pointless injuries in film history. During production in 1991, the young martial artist was filming a scene that required him to kick open a massive oak door with tremendous force. The scene was designed to showcase Jake Lowe's frustration and physical power as he burst through what was supposed to be a locked barrier. In a US magazine interview shortly after filming Wrapped, Lee described the incident with characteristic humor despite the obvious pain it caused him. "We filmed this scene where I had to nail this huge oak door, so I go to do the scene, and I broke one of my toes," Lee explained to the magazine. The injury was immediately severe and visibly shocking to everyone on set. "My foot swelled up to the size of a watermelon, and we had to end filming for the day," he continued, describing how the swelling was so dramatic that it became impossible for him to continue working. The production team had no choice but to shut down filming entirely, while Lee recovered from what turned out to be a significant toe fracture. Cast and crew members watched helplessly as the promising young star hobbled around the set, his foot grotesquely enlarged and clearly causing him considerable discomfort. The injury required medical attention and several days of rest before Lee could return to the physically demanding fight choreography that made up the bulk of his scenes. Perhaps the most frustrating aspect of this entire ordeal was that the scene Lee injured himself filming never made it into the final cut of Rapid Fire. All that pain, the production delay, and the medical bills were completely wasted since director Dwight Little ultimately decided the door-kicking moment didn't serve the story effectively. Lee later joked that adding insult to injury was putting it mildly, considering he had suffered genuine physical damage for absolutely nothing. Fact 2. John Woo's rejected action vision. Before Dwight Little took the director's chair for Rapid Fire, Brandon Lee had his heart set on working with one of the most influential action directors in cinema history. Lee specifically wanted John Woo, the Hong Kong filmmaker who had revolutionized action movies with his signature style of slow-motion gunfights, dual-wielding pistols, and operatic violence, to helm what would become his breakthrough American film. At the time, Woo was already a legend in Hong Kong cinema, having directed groundbreaking films like A Better Tomorrow and The Killer, which were gaining cult followings in the United States among action movie enthusiasts. Lee was particularly drawn to Woo's approach because it combined intense action with emotional storytelling and visual poetry that elevated gunfights into something resembling ballet. The young martial artist saw an opportunity to create something truly special by bringing together his father's martial arts legacy with Woo's innovative filmmaking techniques. However, the executives at 20th Century Fox had completely different ideas about what kind of movie they wanted to make with their investment in Brandon Lee. When Woo was approached about the project, the studio made it clear that they were looking for a straightforward martial arts film that would showcase Lee's fighting abilities in the traditional American action movie format. The producers were strongly against Woo's signature stylized approach, feeling that his artistic vision would interfere with their goal of creating a commercial vehicle designed to launch Lee as the next major action star. The studio's rejection of Woo represented a fundamental misunderstanding of what made Hong Kong action cinema so compelling to audiences worldwide. They wanted the marketability of Bruce Lee's son performing martial arts, but they were unwilling to embrace the innovative filmmaking techniques that could have made Rapid Fire a truly groundbreaking piece of cinema. Instead, they chose the safer route of hiring Dwight Little, who had successfully directed Steven Seagal in Marked for Death, and understood how to deliver the kind of straightforward action movie that Fox executives felt comfortable marketing to American audiences. Fact 3. Secret Swedish cameo connection. One of the most unusual and little-known chapters in Brandon Lee's brief career occurred during his international promotional tour for Rapid Fire, when a chance encounter in Sweden led to what would become his final appearance on film. While Lee was in Sweden promoting his breakthrough action movie, he met director Richard Holm, who was working on an independent Swedish film with the provocative title Sex, Lies and Video Violence, which translates from the original Swedish Sex, Lögner and Videovåld. Holm approached Lee about filming a small cameo appearance as a personal favor, and the young actor agreed to participate in what was essentially a brief, informal shoot during his promotional visit. The cameo was shot quickly and spontaneously, fitting into Lee's busy schedule of interviews and publicity events that were designed to introduce him to European audiences as the next major action star following in his father's footsteps. What makes this cameo particularly significant is the timing of when the Swedish film was eventually completed and released. Due to various production delays and post-production challenges that are common with independent international films, Sex, Lies and Video Violence was not finished and released until 1999, which was 6 full years after Brandon Lee's tragic death on the set of The Crow in March 1993. This unusual timing meant that Lee's small favor for a Swedish filmmaker he had just met became something much more poignant and historically important. When the film finally reached audiences, Lee's brief appearance in Sex, Lies and Video Violence officially became his final screen credit, representing the last time moviegoers would see new footage of the promising young actor whose career was cut tragically short. The cameo serves as a bittersweet reminder of Lee's generous spirit and willingness to help fellow filmmakers, even during the busy and demanding schedule of international film promotion. It also highlights how unpredictable the film industry can be, as what started as a simple gesture of goodwill between artists became an unexpected piece of cinema history. Fact 4. Die Hard sequel's hidden origin. One of the most fascinating connections in action movie history links Brandon Lee's unrealized future to one of the most successful sequels of the 1990s. While Lee was working on The Crow in early 1993, 20th Century Fox had already purchased a hot new spec script called Simon Says, written by Jonathan Hensley, and they were actively planning to cast Lee as the lead in what would become Rapid Fire 2. The original Simon Says script featured a gripping premise about a police detective who finds himself in a deadly cat-and-mouse game with a mad bomber who forces him to run around the city searching for explosive devices that have been planted in various locations throughout the urban landscape. The only assistance the desperate detective receives comes from an unlikely ally in the form of a shop owner who accidentally becomes involved in the dangerous situation and must help solve the bomber's twisted puzzles. Fox executives were excited about the potential of reworking this high-concept thriller into a vehicle that would continue Brandon Lee's character Jake Lowe from the original Rapid Fire, and they began developing plans to adapt the script accordingly. At the same time, Alan B. McElroy, who had written the screenplay for the first Rapid Fire, was also working on other possible ideas for a sequel that would bring back Lee's martial arts character for another action-packed adventure. However, Lee's tragic death during the filming of The Crow in March 1993 completely derailed all plans for any Rapid Fire sequel, leaving Fox with a valuable script but no star to carry the project forward. Rather than abandon the Simon Says concept entirely, the studio decided to retool the screenplay for a different franchise altogether. The script was significantly reworked and eventually became Die Hard with a Vengeance in 1995, starring Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson, though only about the first half of the original Simon Says script was used, with a new main plot involving a Federal Reserve bank robbery added to create the final version that audiences saw in theaters. Fact 5. The Bowling Alley Police Station. One of the most bizarre and memorable location choices in Rapid Fire involves the unconventional headquarters that Powers Boothe's character, Lieutenant Mace Ryan, uses for his special police operations. Rather than operating out of a traditional police station or government building, Ryan and his team conduct their law enforcement activities from inside a fully functioning bowling alley, complete with active lanes, pin-setting machines, and all the typical amenities you would expect to find in a recreational bowling facility. This unusual setting creates one of the film's most talked-about scenes, which perfectly captures the no-nonsense, rules-don't-apply attitude of Boothe's character. During a moment when Ryan is taking a break from the intense investigation, he decides to bowl a few frames to relax and clear his mind. However, when his bowling ball fails to knock down the final pin standing at the end of the lane, Ryan doesn't bother walking down to retrieve his ball for another attempt like a normal bowler would do. Instead, the tough Chicago cop simply draws his nickel-plated Sig Sauer P226 service weapon and calmly shoots the remaining bowling pin to complete his spare. The scene is played completely straight, with Booth delivering the moment with the same casual confidence he brings to every other aspect of his character's law enforcement duties. The other officers around him barely react to this display, suggesting that using firearms to improve bowling scores is just another day at the office for Ryan's unconventional squad. This moment has become a cult favorite among action movie fans because it perfectly encapsulates the over-the-top masculinity and rule-bending attitude that defined early 1990s action cinema. The scene also serves as a perfect character-building moment that shows audiences exactly what kind of cop Ryan is without requiring any dialogue or exposition. The bowling alley setting itself adds to the film's gritty, blue-collar Chicago atmosphere while providing a unique backdrop that sets Rapid Fire apart from other police procedural action movies of the era. Fact 6. Jackie Chan Fight Choreography Tribute. Brandon Lee's admiration for Jackie Chan went far beyond simple respect between martial artists, as Lee openly acknowledged being a self-confessed fan of the Hong Kong action star who had revolutionized fight choreography with his innovative use of props and environmental elements. This mutual admiration was particularly meaningful because Chan himself was a devoted fan of Lee's legendary father Bruce Lee, creating an interesting circle of influence that connected 3 generations of martial arts cinema. When Lee collaborated with stunt coordinator Jeff Imada to choreograph the fight sequences in Rapid Fire, he deliberately incorporated specific techniques and movements that directly paid homage to some of Jackie Chan's most memorable action scenes. During the art gallery shootout early in the film, Lee performs a stunt where he runs an assassin through a glass display while riding a motorcycle, which was a direct tribute to the same move that Chan had executed during the climactic mall showdown in his 1985 action comedy Police Story. The most detailed homages appear in Rapid Fire's finale, which takes place in the criminal compound belonging to Chinese crime boss Kinman Tao. In one sequence, Lee executes a jump-spinning kick, followed by a spinning sweep kick combination against a pair of opponents, recreating the exact same moves that Chan had used against 2 enemies during Police Story's famous mall fight scene. Lee also utilizes a clothing rack as a defensive tool during his battle, which was another specific reference to Chan's innovative use of shopping mall props in the same Police Story sequence. Perhaps the most technically impressive tribute occurs during Lee's fight with legendary stuntman Al Leong, where Lee and Imada incorporated a complex sequence of Wing Chun-derived punches and traps that mirrored Jackie Chan's fight choreography with Benny the Jet Urquidez in Dragons Forever from 1988. The sequence includes Leong ducking to grab Lee by the waist for a takedown, with Lee striking him in the back before Leong slides down to pull his opponent's legs from under him, recreating the exact movements from Chan's earlier film. Fact 7. Multiple gun continuity disasters. Rapid Fire contains some of the most glaring firearms continuity errors ever captured on film, with weapons that seem to have magical shape-shifting abilities that change between camera angles. The most obvious and repeated mistake involves pistols that mysteriously transform from one type of firearm into a completely different model during the same action sequence, creating impossible situations that eagle-eyed viewers have documented extensively. The most notable example occurs during several scenes where characters are carrying Taurus PT-92 AFS pistols, which are easily identifiable by their distinctive design and markings. However, in the very next shot during the same scene, these same weapons inexplicably become Smith & Wesson's 659 pistols, which have a completely different appearance, size, and manufacturer. This transformation happens multiple times throughout the film, suggesting that the prop department either ran out of matching weapons or failed to maintain consistency during the editing process. One particularly amusing continuity error occurs during the warehouse scene when Brandon Lee's character Jake gets a gun off a bad guy and takes cover behind a wall to return fire. In the shot where Jake fires several rounds, his pistol clearly locks back into the empty position, which is what happens when a semi-automatic handgun runs out of ammunition and the slide stays open to indicate the magazine is empty. However, in the very next frame, Jake mysteriously starts shooting again with the same supposedly empty gun, firing multiple rounds as if the weapon had somehow reloaded itself. These errors extend beyond just the hero's weapons, as supporting characters throughout the film experience similar magical gun transformations that defy both physics and basic filmmaking continuity. The mistakes are so obvious and frequent that firearms enthusiasts and movie mistake databases have cataloged them extensively, making Rapid Fire a go-to example for demonstrating how important proper prop management and continuity supervision are during action film production. Fact 8. Shannon Lee's set romance. The set of Rapid Fire became the unlikely location for a romantic connection that would span decades and eventually lead to one of the most ambitious television projects honoring Bruce Lee's legacy. Actor Dustin Nguyen, who played the character Paul Yang in the film, met Brandon Lee's sister Shannon Lee during the production, and their initial encounter would grow into a relationship that extended far beyond the filming schedule. Nguyen was already an established television actor, best known for his role as Detective Harry Aoki on the popular series 21 Jump Street, where he had worked alongside Johnny Depp from 1987 to 1991. His casting in Rapid Fire represented a transition into feature films, and gave him the opportunity to work with Brandon Lee during what would become one of the young martial artist's most important career moments. Shannon Lee, who was visiting the set to support her brother during his breakthrough Hollywood role, formed a connection with Nguyen that would prove to have lasting significance in preserving and expanding their family's martial arts legacy. While their romantic relationship eventually ended, the professional respect and creative partnership that developed between them continued for many years afterward. This connection proved particularly meaningful when Shannon Lee later embarked on her ambitious project to create a television series based on her father Bruce Lee's writings and philosophical concepts about martial arts. When she developed the HBO series Warrior, which premiered in 2019 and was based on Bruce Lee's original treatment for a Western-style martial arts show, Shannon chose to cast Dustin Nguyen in a significant role as the character Ah Sam's father. However, according to production sources, Nguyen's casting in Warrior owed more to his professional relationship with the show's executive producer Justin Lin than to his personal history with Shannon Lee. Lin had previously worked with Nguyen and recognized his abilities as an actor who could bring both dramatic depth and cultural authenticity to the complex family dynamics that were central to the series' storytelling approach. Fact 9. The Reservoir Dogs gun connection. One of the most unexpected connections between Rapid Fire and independent cinema history involves a prop weapon that traveled directly from Quentin Tarantino's breakthrough debut film to Brandon Lee's action showcase. Among the various firearms used during Rapid Fire's production was a Smith & Wesson 6.59 pistol that had already achieved a significant place in movie history as the actual screen-used hero gun that Steve Buscemi wielded as his memorable character Mr. Pink in Reservoir Dogs. Reservoir Dogs had been completed just months before Rapid Fire began production, and the independent film was still making waves in the industry for its innovative storytelling and distinctive visual style. The prop gun from Tarantino's film somehow made its way into the Rapid Fire armory, where it was used during several action sequences without any acknowledgement of its previous cinematic service. This particular pistol was what prop masters call a hero gun, meaning it was specifically modified and prepared for close-up filming and detailed on-screen use, rather than being a standard background prop. Hero guns are typically adapted to fire motion picture blanks safely and are often the weapons that actors actually handle and fire during key scenes, making them more valuable and recognizable than standard prop firearms. The gun appears most notably during scenes where Brandon Lee's character Jake is wielding dual pistols, with the former Reservoir Dogs weapon serving as one of his primary firearms during the intense action sequences. Firearms enthusiasts and movie prop collectors have identified this connection through detailed analysis of the weapon's distinctive markings and modifications that were specifically created for Buscemi's character. This cross-pollination of props between films was not uncommon in early 1990s Hollywood, as prop houses and armories often rented the same modified weapons to multiple productions to maximize their investment in the expensive process of converting real firearms for safe movie use. However, the connection between these two very different films represents an interesting intersection between the emerging independent film movement and traditional studio action cinema. Fact 10. Restaurant set destruction requirements. One of the most elaborate and expensive production decisions in Rapid Fire involved recreating an entire restaurant interior from scratch just to destroy it during filming. The movie's climactic restaurant shootout required a spectacular moment where the building's second-floor balcony would collapse during the intense gunfight between Brandon Lee's character and the various criminal organizations pursuing him throughout the film. The original restaurant location that the production team had scouted and planned to use for filming was a real Chicago establishment that provided the perfect atmosphere and visual design for the action sequence that director Dwight Little had envisioned. However, when the filmmakers approached the restaurant owners about their plans to film the balcony collapse as part of the shootout, they quickly discovered that no real business owner would allow their property to be damaged for the sake of a movie scene. This practical obstacle forced the production team to make a significant financial commitment that would substantially increase the film's budget and extend the construction timeline. The art department and set builders had to completely recreate the entire interior of the Chicago restaurant on a soundstage in Valencia, California, meticulously duplicating every architectural detail, decoration, and structural element to match the original location that audiences had seen in earlier scenes. The replica restaurant had to be built with special considerations that would allow the balcony structure to collapse safely and dramatically during filming while protecting the cast and crew from any potential injury. This required specialized construction techniques and safety equipment that went far beyond what would be needed for a standard movie set that wasn't designed to be destroyed during production. The extensive reconstruction project consumed weeks of preparation time and required the skills of experienced stunt coordinators, special effects experts, and construction professionals who could engineer a controlled collapse that would look realistic and dangerous on camera while maintaining complete safety for everyone involved in filming the sequence. Fact 11. Al Leong's legendary fight choreography. The fight sequence between Brandon Lee and legendary stuntman Al Leong represents one of the most technically impressive and deliberately crafted martial arts moments in American action cinema of the early 1990s. Leong, who was already famous for his memorable villain roles in films like Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, and Big Trouble in Little China, brought decades of professional martial arts experience to his role as Min, one of Kinman Tao's most dangerous henchmen. What makes this particular fight sequence historically significant is the deliberate incorporation of an exact choreographic sequence that had been originally performed by Jackie Chan and Benny the Jet Urquidez in the 1988 Hong Kong film Dragons Forever. Lee and stunt coordinator Jeff Imada carefully studied the original fight and recreated the specific movements as a tribute to Chan's innovative choreography and Urquidez's legendary kicking abilities. The copied sequence begins with an exchange of Wing Chun-derived punches and trapping techniques that showcase Lee's background in Jeet Kune Do, the martial arts philosophy developed by his father Bruce Lee. Following this initial exchange, Leong executes the same ducking maneuver that Urquidez had performed in Dragons Forever, grabbing Lee around the waist in an attempt to execute a takedown, while Lee strikes him in the back with precise defensive movements. The choreography continues with Leong sliding down to Lee's feet to pull his legs from under him, recreating the exact same grappling transition that had made the original Dragons Forever fight so memorable among martial arts enthusiasts. What sets this homage apart from typical fight scenes is that the entire sequence plays out for 10 unbroken seconds of continuous martial arts choreography, filmed with minimal cutting and steady camera work that allows viewers to appreciate the technical skill and precise timing required. This approach was deliberately chosen to honor the Hong Kong style of fight cinematography, which emphasized longer takes and wider shots that showcased the performer's actual martial arts abilities rather than relying on quick editing to create the illusion of combat. Fact 12. Wrong police department uniforms. One of the most glaring geographical mistakes in rapid fire involves the costume department's failure to maintain the illusion that the action is taking place in Chicago, as the story claims. Throughout several scenes in the film, the uniformed police officers can be clearly seen wearing shoulder patches that read Metro Police instead of the Chicago Police insignia that would be appropriate for the movie's supposed setting in the Windy City. This uniform error immediately reveals to observant viewers that the film was actually shot in Los Angeles, where the Metro Police designation is commonly used by various law enforcement agencies in the greater metropolitan area. The mistake is particularly noticeable during action sequences where uniformed officers are prominently featured, such as when they aim their weapons at Brandon Lee's character Jake during his escapes from various dangerous situations throughout the movie. The error represents a significant oversight by the production team, especially considering that creating accurate police uniforms for films is typically a straightforward process that costume departments handle routinely. Police department patches and insignia are easily obtainable through official channels or can be custom created by costume designers who specialize in law enforcement uniforms for movie productions. What makes this mistake particularly amusing to film enthusiasts is that the wrong patches appear in multiple scenes, rather than being an isolated error that could be explained as a simple oversight during a single day of filming. The repeated appearance of Metro Police patches suggests that either the costume department never noticed the geographical inconsistency, or the production was operating under such tight budget constraints that they chose to use existing Los Angeles police uniforms rather than investing in Chicago-specific costumes. This type of location-revealing error has become a favorite target for movie mistake databases and eagle-eyed viewers who enjoy spotting the various ways that films accidentally reveal their true shooting locations despite claims of taking place in entirely different cities or even countries. Fact 13. Brandon's acting ambition beyond action. Brandon Lee's true artistic aspirations extended far beyond the martial arts and action sequences that had defined his early career, and his time on the rapid-fire set provided him with an unexpected opportunity to explore those dramatic ambitions. During filming, Lee formed a meaningful professional relationship with Raymond J. Barry, a highly respected stage performer and dramatist who was playing the role of corrupt FBI agent Frank Stewart in the movie. Barry brought decades of serious theatrical experience to the production, having built his reputation through challenging dramatic roles that showcased his range as a classically trained actor rather than through action or commercial film. Lee was immediately drawn to Barry's background in legitimate theater and saw an opportunity to learn from someone who had achieved the kind of artistic credibility that he hoped to develop in his own career. During conversations between takes, Lee expressed genuine interest in starring in one of Barry's original plays as a way to build his dramatic credibility and demonstrate that he possessed acting abilities that went beyond his physical martial arts skills. Barry was genuinely excited by the prospect of working with Lee in a theatrical setting, recognizing that the young actor had both natural talent and the star power that could bring valuable exposure to serious dramatic productions. Lee's career goals were remarkably ambitious and carefully planned, as he hoped to follow a path similar to actors like Johnny Depp or Mel Gibson, who had successfully transitioned from early commercial roles into broader acting careers that included both blockbuster entertainment and respected dramatic work. He saw Rapid Fire as an important stepping stone that would establish his action credentials while opening doors to more diverse and challenging roles that would allow him to grow as a performer. Barry later acknowledged that Lee had impressed him not just as a martial artist and action star, but as someone who understood the craft of acting and was genuinely committed to developing his skills through formal theater training and serious dramatic roles that would challenge his abilities. Fact 14. The electrocuted dummy train death. The climactic death scene of villain Kinman Tao contains one of the most obvious and poorly executed special effects substitutions in early 1990s action cinema. The sequence begins dramatically enough, with actor Tsi Ma's character being electrocuted after Jake Lowe escapes from Tao's attempt to pin him to the subway tracks during their final confrontation in the underground transit system. After being shocked by the electrified third rail, Tao falls onto the train tracks and manages to stand up just in time to see an oncoming subway train bearing down on him at full speed. The scene is designed to provide a suitably dramatic and violent end for the main villain, with Tao crying out in terror and throwing his arms up in a futile attempt to protect himself from the approaching locomotive. However, the execution of this death scene falls apart completely in the final moments when the train actually makes contact with the villain. In what film mistake databases have described as painfully obvious, viewers can clearly see that a crude dummy has been substituted for Tsi Ma just before the train impact occurs. The dummy is so obviously artificial and poorly constructed that it immediately breaks the illusion and turns what should be a shocking moment into an unintentionally comedic special effects failure. The dummy substitution is particularly noticeable because the filmmakers failed to match the positioning, clothing, or basic proportions of the real actor, making the switch clearly visible even to casual viewers who aren't specifically looking for special effects mistakes. The dummy appears stiff and lifeless in a way that contrasts sharply with Tsi Ma's dynamic performance in the moments leading up to the impact. This type of obvious dummy substitution was unfortunately common in lower-budget action films of the era, when digital effects were not yet available and practical effects required careful planning and execution that the rapid-fire production team apparently did not have the time or resources to accomplish convincingly. Fact 15. Fox's action hero of the 90 seconds campaign. 20th Century Fox's ambitious marketing campaign for Rapid Fire created an unexpected source of discomfort for Brandon Lee, who found himself caught between the studio's grand promotional vision and his own more modest assessment of his career trajectory. The studio's publicity department developed a bold tagline that proclaimed, "Brandon Lee, the action hero of the 90s," which they plastered across movie posters, television advertisements, and promotional materials throughout the film's release campaign. Lee himself found this marketing approach to be overly emphatic and premature, considering that he viewed Rapid Fire as his first legitimate starring role in a major Hollywood production. While he had appeared in previous films including Showdown in Little Tokyo and several lower-budget international productions, Lee understood that Rapid Fire represented his first real opportunity to prove himself as a leading man capable of carrying a big-budget action movie. The young actor was particularly concerned about the potential long-term consequences of being labeled so definitively as an action hero when his career was still in its early stages. Lee worried that such aggressive genre-specific marketing might pigeonhole him into action roles exclusively, limiting his opportunities to explore other types of characters and dramatic situations that would allow him to grow as a performer. Despite being comfortable with his father's martial arts legacy and proud of his own physical abilities, Lee had much broader artistic ambitions that extended beyond the action genre. He hoped to use Rapid Fire as a springboard to mainstream success that would eventually open doors to the kind of diverse career that actors like Johnny Depp or Mel Gibson had achieved, combining commercial blockbusters with serious dramatic roles. The tension between Fox's marketing strategy and Lee's personal career goals highlighted the common conflict between studio promotional needs and actor artistic aspirations, particularly for performers who possess specialized skills like martial arts that can easily become both their greatest asset and their most limiting characteristic in Hollywood's typecasting system.